Welcome back to the Afterword podcast for the conclusion of our conversation with Harrison Brookie from the Alchemy Theater and James Cary, comedy writer for the BBC. Normally, Amy, we have people at the table who are librarians, tech geeks, writers, illustrators. This is a little bit different for us to invite the funny kids to our table.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm at the cool kids table.
I know. Well, we brought the cool kids table to us, I think.
Writers are not cool. Comedy writers are always in the way the whole time. When you're on set and they're actually making your show, you're the only person who doesn't actually technically have a job to do. And you're basically having to apologize for being there the whole time. That's the way it works in the UK. Obviously, the writers run the show in America in TV, but not in the UK. They'd kind of rather you didn't turn up. So they can just get on and shoot the show.
Well, we're glad you're at our table because honestly,
thank you. I feel loved and appreciated.
You should, because you've got some pretty funny stuff that you've put out there. I know one of the things that I enjoy watching over and over is your monologue with James and Peter, and I make sure that everybody in my world has seen it. And I get really frustrated if they don't have time to watch it with me, because one of the things Harrison talked about is this idea of communal laughter. I want people to watch that video with me so I can laugh with them. Yeah. I'm like, please watch this. It is the funniest thing ever. You've got to watch it. And I want to laugh with them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because it gives a new life to you, a new experience.
It does.
That's right.
And it never gets old.
Yeah.
It never gets old for me.
I've always been one of those people who's always saying, hey, watch this, watch this, watch this. Come and watch this, come and watch this.
Yeah.
I remember I first heard about it on a podcast somewhere. Before he was particularly famous, there's a very funny Bill Burr routine where he talks about Steve Jobs. And he has a proper go at people who love Apple products. And I'm an Apple guy. I'm talking to you on on a MacBook Pro and all that kind of business. But I made loads of people watch that video in person. I sat there with them, and you can put it on Facebook and share it. But it's not the same as being in the room with someone and just say, hey, watch this. I was like that growing up. I videoed. Remember those? Yep. I videoed the first Nick Park Wallace and Gromit thing. I don't know if you know about that.
I love Wallace and Gromit.
The Aardman animation. So the whole Aardman business thing. But the very first one, I watched it where they go to the moon, called A Grand Day Out. And I just like, oh, this is amazing. And I made my parents watch it. And then I made them watch A Close Shave a few years later and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm very much one of those people who's just like, come and see this. Come and stop what you're doing and come and see this now. And now I get to do it with my kids.
Let me ask you this, James. Doesn't it make you mad, though, when they don't laugh with you?
Yeah, it does. But I've got pretty good judgment, so I'm pretty... I tend to win.
Wait, judgment of content
but it is
or judgment
annoying
of
when
friends?
they don't... Yeah, or maybe they're just humoring me.
See, I'm going to have to work on that.
No, I'm thinking back now.
Amy's got bad friends.
They're just...
They just don't know what's funny.
No.
Because it's hilarious.
Right.
Oh, man.
Well, what are the elements of a good joke? What keeps humor fresh and edgy? I mean, we've heard about the acronym THREES: target, hostility, realism, exaggeration, emotion, and surprise. But what do you use, Harrison?
I've never heard that before.
I've never heard that before either.
We just taught them
Threes?
something new. Yes, it's called THREES.
Can you say them all again?
Target, hostility, realism, exaggeration, emotion, and surprise.
Where's that from?
I'll have to.
Amy wrote the script.
I wrote the script, so I'll have to find the article that I researched and got that from.
I'm sure it'll be in the show notes.
Yep.
But yeah, no, never come across that. Because I think because instinctively, I know that when I started out writing comedy like 25 years ago, like as a student and stuff, you just write it. You watch comedy and then you just write it. You start off writing sketches that are basically rip-offs of sketches, like Monty Python sketches or something, where you just change one or two key elements, or you write parody sketches. And so anyone, the 12-year-old version of me is writing, X Factor sketches or America's Got Talent or whatever it is. They're writing those kinds of sketches because they're parodying the biggest format that there is, and everyone knows what it is.
Yeah, the writing world's interesting. In improvisation, when we're teaching people how to do comedy and they're doing it right now, in front of other students. And so it's this incredible litmus test. I say a lot that a comedy show is one of the most honest experiences you can have because it's really hard to fake a laugh, especially the whole time. And you can really feel it. Where you can go to a drama And if you just put a microphone there, you wouldn't really know if people enjoyed it. But comedy is like a really honest litmus test of this was enjoyable. And I think in improv, for example, it's trial by fire. You get up, you do it, people don't laugh, we discuss why, we do it again. We do it again. Yeah. And you just learn over time and through experience. I've done thousands of shows, and you just have to get better or feel the shame of not.
Yeah. Feel the shame.
That sounds terrifying.
I know.
Get better or feel the shame.
Oh, that sounds ruthless.
But you get better. And what's great about the context of improv culture is, I mean, saying yes and being supportive. Most improv shows are ensembles of people who are creating a live improv show. And so it's so supportive. And so there's this environment of we all want to try, we all want to fail. There's an expectation because the audience is giving suggestions and they're along for the ride. They're seeing you create the content. So as you write it, you're saying it and they're seeing it. And so they're along for the ride. They feel as a part of it as much as you do. Mm-hmm. And so you're almost co-writing it with the audience. I mean, you're certainly the guide because they don't know what they're doing. It's a really collaborative experience that doesn't feel that scary. I say when people come to take Improv 101 class at Alchemy, I say the scariest part of taking an improv class is showing up to an improv class. And then from there, you start to feel comfortable with each other and grow. And in your 101 showcase, in 6 weeks, you do an improv show, and it's an incredibly positive experience.
You've almost convinced me to sign up.
I know a guy.
If you'll give the information at the very end,
I could do it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Well, if humor is universal, why can't we agree on what is actually funny? And James, you've kind of hit on this a little bit. Why is comedy subjective?
Comedy is asymmetrical, if I can sound boring and technical for a moment. And I've never heard anyone talk about this, but I guess it must be true. Is because if I tell you a joke, we relate to the object in the joke differently. So if I told you a joke about Hillary Clinton, then I don't know how you feel about Hillary Clinton, and you don't know how I feel. So I may tell a really mean-spirited joke about her, and you may really like her. And you may think, hey, you're a Brit, get lost, mind your own business. And in the same way, that I can tell jokes about my mum that you don't get to say. You don't get to tell those jokes about my mum. What? Hang on, that's my mum. And so we relate to the subject matter of the joke differently. And if you don't know the person you're telling the joke to, and you don't know the fact that they feel differently from the subject matter about it than you, then you've just put your foot in it. And you didn't know, so what are you meant to do? But also, there's the other bit I mentioned in the book. So a comedy needs a surprise, but sometimes the surprise is actually a shock. And so the example I give is it's a bit like going into a bathroom and you wash your hands and water comes out the tap, but it gushes out the tap and makes you soaking wet and makes you look like you've had an accident and wet yourself, which is obviously embarrassing. It's like a hack kind of sitcom situation. You know, if somebody said to you what happened, you just say, well, water came out the tap. And go, well, yeah, what do you think was going to come out of the tap? Well, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you weren't expecting it to come out that fast. And so it's a bit of a Family Guy thing. And actually in his book, Win Bigly, the Scott Adams book, he talks about how your current president has a New York sense of humor, where partly the joke is the intensity of the joke. And you get that in Family Guy as well. So in Family Guy, you have, hey, it's a happy situation. And then bang, the joke is so disproportionately hard hitting that you're just laughing at just how inappropriate the joke is. But the problem is, if you laugh at the joke, then it looks like you're laughing at the joke rather than laughing at the joke about the joke, if you see what I mean.
Gotcha.
So when Trump was asked about McCain, about his military service, and Trump just said, hey, you know what? I like people who weren't captured. I mean, that's just like, what? That's a terrible joke to say. It's really funny that you think that joke is okay. But if you're from a particular sensibility of comedy, which is a Family Guy, New York sense of comedy, that's the joke. But if you laugh at that joke, it looks like you're laughing at McCain's service record. And you're not. You're laughing at like, whoa, that's just like, presidential candidates can't say that. That's crazy. But the joke sounds the same. Do you see what I mean? And so suddenly everyone's running for cover.
But if you're his supporter, you trust him. He feels safe to you, even though he's a puncher, right? And so you're like, he didn't mean this. He's just funny, right? But if you don't support him, he's not safe to you, and you don't laugh. Yeah,
exactly. And so everyone then starts picking over the bones of it. But you see, the asymmetry is really key there, isn't it?
It is.
And so there are so many ways in which, blend it with party politics, and you've just got a really toxic mix there.
I have a theory about Family Guy and animated comedies in general that so The Simpsons laid out this groundwork for a long time as the beginning of animated comedies. And The Simpsons has a lot of heart to it. If you watch Simpsons, there are a lot of really great relationships, a lot of great heart to it, especially the real good Simpsons episodes, seasons. And then Family Guy has a lot less heart. It's almost in improv language, it's almost a second beat. That if you know what The Simpsons are and you know that animated shows exist and this idea of a reality there, then you don't really need that much heart. You can just go for laughs the whole time. And there's this new show that I'm a big fan of. It's been around for a couple of years called Rick and Morty, which what I call the third beats of animated comedy. It's so fast and so ridiculous. And for the most part, there's very, very little heart to it that I don't think you can really enjoy that show if you've never watched an animated comedy before. You have to have the context of even that animated comedy exists as a thing. And if you have, then you'll really, really like Rick and Morty. If you haven't, you almost got to go back and watch season 5 of The Simpsons to get a context for it.
Yeah. And the context, so the context of that show is so important. And so, but if you watch that show with your mom,
right,
she would watch it just going, what is this?
Right.
What? What? And it's but you don't get all the shorthand and the references.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, that's how you read anything. Yeah, that's how you read the Bible. It's just what strange thing is going on here? It's just you don't know what happened in the first century.
Yeah. If you read the New Testament, having never read the Old Testament,
he's referring to this and that this is a reference to that, which is from a book of the Bible written 1,000 years earlier, and blah blah blah.
Right.
So comedy is kind of just the same, really. But if you decide, this thing is not funny, it's not acceptable, then you go, on its own it isn't, but nothing's on its own.
Right.
How can anything be on its own? It's insane. That doesn't stop people from, having a go. And this is the crazy times we live in.
I love that we keep bringing up Family Guy and cultural appreciation of comedy. A number of years ago, I taught school in Guatemala, and the moms of the elementary school students put together Family Day. These were for the most part, very religious moms. They were all very nice people. They were upper middle class and well-to-do people. And they brought in the banner and hung it up, huge banner across the back of the school, Family Day, and there was a big picture of Family Guy. And we all just kind of went,
that's great. And they had no idea.
They had no idea. Family Day,
they
Family Guy.
Right.
And we were just and I remember Michael, our school director, saying, just don't say it, don't say it, let it go.
Oh, that's good.
Going there, are some subjects in comedy really taboo? Are there some things that are off limits?
I mean, the farther a thing is a violation, the farther you have to benign it. So if you've seen the Dave Chappelle Netflix special, I feel he's one of the best, right? And so he tackles incredibly difficult topics from politics to abortion. And I would say most of the time he nails it. But there's a couple times where I didn't laugh. And I was like, man, it's such a hard thing to contextualize this. And one of the difficulties is if you go to a stand-up open mic, people see the best people who are dealing with these really tough topics. Like, oh, Chris Rock is nailing this issue. So when I'm going to start out dirty. I'm going to start out hard-hitting. But that's actually harder to do, right? So when we teach our stand-up classes, a lot of what we say is what is real to you? What is recognizable to you? What are things that you are already laughing at? Say those things. Start with that. Get the rhythm. Because what Dave Chappelle's doing is super, super, super hard.
Yeah, my instinct was, I get asked this a lot about taboos, and it's just no, there are no taboos. You might think, concentration camps, not funny. Well, Oscar-winning movie, Life is Beautiful, half of that is set in an Italian concentration camp.
Yeah.
And it's not hilarious. It's not like a Mel Brooks movie, but it has comic elements in it. It's actually a very weirdly warm-hearted thing. And I would always argue the skill of the artist is that they take you to areas where you didn't think that you could go. So I used to think I would find it hard to find anything on the subject of abortion funny. But then Louis C.K.'s got a bit on it where he completely messes with the audience, where he sort of expresses abortion in different ways and just saying, well, some say, abortion is just like this. Or maybe it's actually this. And the audience is just freaking out, just oh my goodness, what is he doing? What is he? But you couldn't be you couldn't be an open spot new guy and get away with that. You need that kind of safety of this guy knows what he's doing, and he knows that his audience probably have certain views on this kind of issue, and now he's messing with them. And you just go, oh, that's interesting. And he's messing with them in a way that I thought was really funny. But again, some people won't ever find that funny.
Yeah.
And that's fine. They can say, well, that's not funny. And you can say, no, it is funny. You don't like it. It is funny. But yeah, so you're about to mention The Onion, which is
amazing. If you don't know, The Onion's a fake news thing that was in print for a long time, and now it's predominantly online. But they came out with an issue like the week after 9/11, and they were in New York, and it's so funny. And it was hard, I'm sure, to do well. And going back and look at it is like, man, this is like, even this is after 9/11 happened. I mean, 9/11, that's a pretty sensitive topic for Americans, right?
Yeah.
And they had this great story.
The one
about,
headline I remember, well, there are a couple. One is American woman bakes cake in the shape of a flag because she doesn't know what else to do or something like that.
That's right.
But the best one was America vows to destroy whoever it is we're at war with.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's even one that's
we
like,
had no idea. We
there's
just
even
didn't
one
know.
Like new Al Qaeda leader really excited for unveiling of one building. Like he's like, yeah, we're so excited about this, right? And so those are funny, but they're hard to do.
Yeah.
And these are talented people. That's where the skill comes in. Yeah.
Yeah. And people trust the Onion's judgment.
That's
they
right.
already had built a bit of brand.
That's right.
Around that. The other Onion headline I can never forget, I just always really enjoy, is when the previous, before 2 popes ago or something, but there was a headline which just said, aging pope, inverted commas, just blessing everything in sight. I always find that so funny.
Yeah. And what's fun about The Onion is it's
I just
fake.
love that idea.
And so sometimes people are fooled by it. And when I say with The Onion is, if you get fooled by it, they're making fun of you. And I remember I saw a headline, this is right before the 2016 election, and it said, Hillary Clinton, too eager to be first female president. And I said, that's true. That is, oh my gosh, this is fake. They got me. Right? That is one of the things that is kind of frustrating about Hillary Clinton. But yeah, that's true. Yeah. It really got me. And I think there's some real truth to that.
Wow. Well, that's interesting that you would pick up those things. And yes, you could probably quantify what is funny. You could quantify maybe things that are taboo. And James, you did say very eloquently that, it is funny. You just didn't think it was funny.
Yeah, you didn't like it.
One of my favorite movies is Much Ado About Nothing. I belly laugh through that movie every time. I just think it's hilarious. And if you don't understand some of the context and the language from it, okay, I think it's funny.
Holland's shaking his head. Holland's shaking his head now.
Holland doesn't think it's funny, but I think it's funny.
Is that the Kenneth Branagh version?
Yes.
That's funny. That's a funny movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny. Hilarious,
Yeah.
Okay, but I agree with you.
It just doesn't appeal to me.
It doesn't appeal. It is funny. You just don't think it's funny, and I can go with that.
No, I think he's right about that. I mean, I would say, yeah, it's funny. It's just not appealing to me. I don't want to sit there for an hour and a half or whatever it is and watch it.
And if we could, I bet we could give you like a year-long class on all the context needed for it, then show it to you, and you would enjoy it.
Believe me, if it meant I didn't have to take another year-long class on What to Do About Nothing, I would laugh heartily.
Get you out of some work. All right. So James and Harrison, our signature question at the Afterword is looking at a metaphor. And what is a metaphor that helps us understand the impact of humor on life? Harrison, I'm going to throw it to you first.
When I think about what makes me laugh, I think of like something that is electric. So it's shock, it's surprising. It doesn't kill us, but it shocks us. And so when I think about comedy, I also think about like the rails of a metro. And when they get close, they kind of have this spark. When I think of the value of comedy, I think it has this ability to move people in a way that can convince them, like The Onion does, if they are open to the experience. Comedy can get people to change. I think comedy has the ability to make people change. I'm an educator at my core. I think comedy has an ability to educate people.
Wow. That is awesome. I'm loving that. All right, James, what's a metaphor for humor?
I don't care about educating people. Well, I don't know. Although I have very strong opinions on many things, on faith and politics and everything, is I don't care what other people think. I don't feel the need to persuade people. I'm fairly sort of libertarian in my views, which is unusual because most British people who write comedy in particular are all socialists, and I'm very much not. But for me, what comedy does that I really like is it highlights the absurdity of life itself. It just demonstrates that life is just weird and dysfunctional and not perfect. And I love jokes that do that. And I remember thinking, beforehand, I'm probably going to be asked what my favorite joke is. And I never have an answer for that question, but I did think of one that I just keep coming back to again and again.
Do tell.
It's a Stephen Wright joke. He just says, I once got someone some wrapping paper as a gift, and I took it to the counter and they said, do you want it wrapped? And I said, sure, but use different paper so they know when to stop. And I just love that. I just love that joke. And it just like the idea of someone just unraveling something, unwrapping it and just going, no, the wrapping was the gift. And I just think comedy just makes us look absurd. And it's interesting that the only people who object to comedy are people who don't appreciate the absurdity because the thing that they're angry about is very, very serious to them. And it is interesting how, just to talk about Jesus ever so briefly, which I know is not the remit of the show, but I'm always attracted to how Jesus made people angry, and he was often very funny, but he went out of his way to offend people. He actually intentionally made them angry. But I think that absurdity, I think, is at the core of the universe that we live in. And so comedy is a metaphor for that, which sort of highlights that. And the sooner you realize that absurdity is nothing but delightful, the happier you will be, I think.
I am so impressed. And I love that you brought that idea of absurdity and this idea of comedy being like an electric shock and moving people and making change. I think these two metaphors very much dovetail together in recognizing.
Well, that wasn't the intention.
Well, it may not be the intention, but I certainly am seeing the connection. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to think about the power of comedy and how when we move forward, we are making change. And you said that once we accept that life is absurd, then it can be delightful. And you can either stand on the side of the tracks of the train and not get on and just say, I'm just going to be mad about life, or you can get on the train and enjoy the delightful ride of the absurdity.
Give in.
Give in.
Give in to the funny side.
Do it.
There you go.
Well, this was a great conversation to begin 2020 with. Thank you so much for being here, Harrison and James, and talking about comedy and humor. And the very first night I met you, Amy, you were full of jokes. I will not forget that. And the funny thing was, you looked so serious. We were at this writing class, and we were sitting across the room from each other. And I looked and I thought, you look so serious. And then it was like, and now Amy, you're going to read. And she starts reading, and her whole story was like joke after joke, and it was really, really fun.
Well, you have to put this in context. I'm in a room of other newbie writers. I'm the new girl on the block, and I have this book. It's filled with a lot of humor and a lot of analogy and wordplay. And they said, Amy, why don't you share your book? I'm dying. This is the fear. And then what happened when I heard the laugh? It was like, wow.
Yeah.
There may be something to this little book that I wrote.
Yeah.
It hasn't gotten published yet, but one day maybe.
No, but it did open up other things.
It did.
We're sitting here talking about humor, maybe in part because
there you go.
You sat there and told all those jokes that you didn't know if anybody was going to laugh or not, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Wonderful.
This is an election year, and speaking of comedy, we'll be talking about politics in our next episode next week with campaign coach Deb Sofield and former state representative Phyllis Henderson about stories from the campaign trail. And that is going to be a great conversation. Deb is quite focused and intense, and Phyllis has so many good stories from all her years of leadership.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be a great topic. Thank you for listening, for leaving us a rating, a review. If you've not subscribed, please take a moment and do that at www.theafterwordpodcast.com so you can stay up to date on all the latest Afterword information and with links to fabulous guest resources such as James's book, The Sacred Art of Joking, and the Alchemy Theater, where Harrison is the founder. As always, you are welcome at our table.